Hey guys, welcome. We're glad you're joining us on YouTube. That's awesome. Um, if you guys want anything specifically on YouTube, then please comment below. So things like to see behind the scenes. You guys get a little dose of behind the scenes, but a little more of that. Or we could do a Q&A just on YouTube. We love our YouTube subscribers, and we love having you guys join us on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and please leave us some comments below.
Okay, let's get started. Okay, question. Can we handle a relapse?
Before we get into that question and topic, first want to just share a testimonial from our Shattered to Thriving course, and we have a couple who reached out, and he shared that he and his wife went through the second module, excuse me, which is about disclosure, and he said it was so hard, it was so tough, and he was really like, it was kind of gut wrenching is really where he went. But he said since then, even though it was hard, we see how good it was for us because now we're into the module on connection, which has been amazing. And so as a couple, they're both like really motivated, and relieved, I would say, that they've been able to go through each module. So really happy about the results that they're getting from that course to thrive.
To just go along with what you just said, Kobe, what we put in there is not fluff. It's not, hey guys, this is the easy stuff. We put in there real, and healing can be painful and it can be hard, but it also, the dividends are awesome.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love to hear that the process is working for
Yeah,
them.
for sure.
Yeah.
Especially when someone says they're in pain, but it's good. I'm all about that.
Yeah, because we're feeling it too, right? And I do love hearing your feedback. So thank you guys for those of you who have finished this first group of the course and who are giving us feedback of what you loved and what was hard and what you worked through. So it's fun. For those of you who are waiting, there's been lots of you saying, hey, when are you going to re-release this program? We're going to, and we're going to do it for you guys. And special discount for you listeners using the code HOLIDAY, all caps, over at shatteredtothriving.com. You will get that discount and the program that you're desperately wanting. So if you want to keep listening here, go ahead. We're still here, guys. We're still here. Let's get started.
Awesome. Okay. So, can we handle a relapse? Get questions about relapse all the time.
For sure.
And I think it's important, we've done this for how many episodes now? Over 100. And we've talked about relapse a ton and what lust is and all those things. But it's important that you understand what relapse is. And it's important to understand relapse, and it's important to understand what needs to be disclosed and what doesn't need to be disclosed for a relapse. It's possible for a couple to actually thrive after relapse. I know that sounds crazy. I'm not saying that relapse isn't painful and it doesn't hurt, but a couple can thrive after relapse
too, because it will breed this.
I want to
thriving.
foster growing moments. I'm just going to go ahead and relapse.
Which we've heard that too.
Yeah, check your denial at the door. Right? Don't use this as an excuse to say, "Oh, good, I can go relapse," because absolutely not. Relapse is not. It's not awesome, but it is a learning opportunity. It's a growth opportunity, and it can move you forward if you have certain things in place to be able to move forward. So let's talk about the bad before we talk about how it can work. Okay, things. Cody, I'm sure you hear this all the time. I hear it all the time. Well, I don't want to tell her because it'll hurt her.
It'll do more harm than good right now. I mean, we're kind of in an okay spot. Yeah, I've heard.
The holidays are coming up. Or I know she has this really stressful thing at work. And so I'm just going to keep this one to myself. It was just a little slip thing, and going to minimize it down so I can justify not disclosing it.
For sure. I used all of that in my relapses, like always. okay, so going really well. I don't want to burden her because I'm out of town, and if I tell her that, it'll be really hard.
Okay, so something to
All those
understand
things.
is that the damage done to the relationship is more about the denial and the lying than it is about the infidelity.
The wound itself.
Yeah, the infidelity hurts and it's not helpful to the relationship, obviously. But the trust being shattered happens by all of that justification and all of that lying and all of that omitting. And it creates a scenario in the relationship where the partner doesn't know what they don't know. They just don't trust. How can they trust? So, is there a time when not disclosing is appropriate in recovery?
I'm curious.
Well, we already talked about it.
Well, yeah, we did. So I'm gonna say that there's never a time where the betrayal of trust or an action of relapse that compromises safety and trust should be withheld.
I love the way you said that, Coby. Yes.
The timing of it is, I think, really, really important, because the timing of it can really aid the process, like the learning process of it. So it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. And I would put an asterisk next to that when, saying within 24 hours.
Okay.
And at least that's the rule to operate against. There's going to be exceptions, all the time, but that's what I would say.
Okay. I love the way you said that, and I can't repeat the way you said that, but it made a lot of sense.
Rewind and I don't know.
Yeah. It's you got to ask yourself this question: am I not telling them because, really because of them, because I'm being kind, or am I not telling them to protect me? And the chances are you're not telling them to protect you, and you're making the excuse that it will hurt them. So that's why you're not telling them. So what needs to be disclosed? I would say every relapse needs to be disclosed. But that's why it's important to get really clear about what relapse is. Together as a couple, look, these things are considered relapse, so these things need to be disclosed to me. And it comes down to that flow chart that you share, right? Where usually it leads to being open and being honest. And but there are little nitty gritty things throughout the day that aren't relapse, that you don't need to come out of fear and anxiety to make sure that you're being an honest person, disclose everything that you ever thought throughout the day.
Yeah, those I think are the ones that can do more damage, because it's like, oh my gosh, we're never going to get over this. If I know that you're having a million thoughts about this thing, then there's no hope.
Yes.
And I think that can go both ways. I do want to say, when you say it's not about the actual acting out, a lot of times for most of us who've been betrayed, it's the truth telling or the lying. And that's, I think, why so many can listen to this podcast or come to therapy or group from us, and doesn't matter what their actual acting out was, the behaviors and the feelings are so similar.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I would say, in so many ways, is what betrayal trauma is all about.
Right.
Betrayal trauma is about betrayal, the act of betrayal, yes.
And it's betraying partner by compromising safety and trust through action.
Yes, absolutely. And so the betrayal goes on and on and on through the secrecy, through the shame, through the lying, through all of those things. So we were talking about earlier, there's a big difference between a person who relapses and they're in a white knuckle sobriety mode, and a person who relapses in recovery.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What's the difference?
World difference.
Sure.
I want to hear what you say.
I know, I want to hear what you.
Really?
It's more this is more your side of the story than mine.
Okay, I'll share if you share, and I'll go first. But this perspective from, I just want to be really clear.
My perspective on
No.
Or
Yes. Your perspective on me, but because there's value in the addicted or the indulgent to hear your perspective from the betrayed on that. Okay, so I would argue this, that there's a very different frame of mind when there's relapse in sobriety versus a relapse in recovery, and there is a very different energy that corresponds with that frame of mind. And that has everything to do with it. So what I would say is this: is a relapse in sobriety. Me was this grinding, like vice grip, painful experience of white knuckling that led to relapse. And then I was in such shame, such deep shame. I couldn't see anything else but just like how worthless I was. But I knew I had to share, disclose, and I would come forward in this state of just like weakness. I would come forward like really small if I came forward, when I came forward, and I would just spit it out because I knew I had to do it. It was just dutiful. It was dutiful sharing. It wasn't like, oh man, I relapsed. It was just, that's what it was. And I wasn't thinking about what I can learn from it. I was thinking about how when I tell Ashlynn. So that was the frame of mind that I was in, and that was all in the fog of addiction.
Can I share my point of view on that, and then we'll move to the next?
Yeah.
Okay. My point of view on that, yes, very similar. I also think back to when we were living in that, we didn't talk about it, only when it came up. So only when he would dare come and tell me, which was never around the time it actually happened. It was like usually quite a while after.
It was usually like many, many days or weeks.
Yes. And so just that compounded the, gosh, like it wasn't, and I would say that over and over, it's not what you're doing, it's the fact that you keep lying and you keep holding it, and it just makes it so much worse. So there was that. I think the not talking about it for sure was number one with us. And then I think, I forgot the other one.
You know what's interesting, Ashlynn, and maybe you experienced this, but a lot of times I'll hear from partners who will say, I knew that they relapsed. Like I could tell. I got home from work that day, and I knew it. And it's interesting because that relapse is, they're now in the shame cycle of the addiction cycle, and so they're starting to detach and disconnect and withdraw and internalize their shame. And so as much as they're trying to just act like everything's okay, the energy is different in the relationship. Right.
And I think he would often show up, and we both did, in our cycles where, he was like, I'm going to clean the house and I'm going to do all this. I'm going to do
all the shame. Because I was stuck in the shame cycle.
So it was addiction. Like, I'm going to hurry and pray more. I'm going to show up more, and I'm going to look good because holy crap, I feel like crap over here. So I could see it, whether I was like really saying this is what's happened.
Yes.
I knew it. That energy that you talk about, like 100%, yes. I felt that.
So you just identified a big one, and Coby, I think this shifted for you, is when you were white knuckling and trying to prove yourself. Two things: you were in a fixed mindset, meaning your worth and everything was fixed on whether you were sober or not. So it was a huge crash, devastation when you made that mistake.
For sure.
Right. The other thing I'm forgetting. the other thing is. This is important. I got to get it.
Do you need some focus factor?
Yes.
Doing all the things? No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's that. So the other thing is that you, a man in recovery knows how to surrender, and let go, and find his self-worth outside of proving
that
himself.
Event.
Yes.
Ooh.
And so you went into prove yourself mode. I got to show her I'm good enough. I got to show, I got to do more in order to be okay.
Yeah.
And a man in recovery, he'll make a mistake, and he'll feel the guilt, and he'll feel the pain of that, and he'll own it, and he'll realize that he is okay exactly where he's at right then. And he'll clean that mess up. He'll deal with the circumstances. He'll deal with the consequences.
That's so interesting.
Love that. I'm also going to add one more that I noticed was we weren't doing anything about it. So there was no... Like, I didn't know that I could be more empowered to say, this no longer works for me.
Yes.
Like, I have value. And
you just kind of get mad and whatever.
And it was just this vicious cycle of, I'm going to be so mad at you until I don't feel that energy anymore.
Yes.
And we just kept doing, so there was no learning.
Yes.
From the relapse.
And we would...
For either of us.
So recovery for you, Ashlynn, and for the addicted is... When that happens, it's an opportunity for growth, and it's an opportunity for change to happen in your lives to move forward in some way.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yes.
I'm gonna one more thing on my end. I didn't do anything for myself when he relapsed besides get mad at him.
Yes.
So I had a lot more control over how I chose to deal with it. I just didn't do
Right.
any of it. So
Yes.
that was another thing that helped take care of myself after. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about, again, this is the part 2, which is what does a relapse look like and feel like in recovery. And 29 months after starting specialized therapy was when I relapsed. And I had relapsed, and I looked at porn. I hadn't masturbated, but I looked at porn, and all of a sudden just like, oh my gosh, what happened? And so I had immediately that night talked with my sponsor, and we walked through what that looked like. And then within 24 hours, because we'd set that rule up, I shared with you. And I had, so what that looked like for me personally is I was able to, because I knew that my relapse hadn't defined me, I was able to tap into the courage that I actually had within me to say, this doesn't define me, so I'm actually going to speak this to my sponsor, and I'm going to have the courage to be within my integrity, to share it with him, with the intention of processing it and looking at it and learning from it, so I can go to Ashlynn rather than just throwing up a problem in her lap and saying kind of like, now what do we do? Do you love me? Do you not? It's like I've processed through it myself, and I've identified very specific things that I need to be able to do to help prevent this in future. I've got to be able to tap into the emotions and the situations below that perpetuated it. So we had the conversation, and it was a very surreal moment for me. But I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly where you were, and just shared. And it was a really important experience for me because to that point, I don't know if you remember this or not, but to that point, I was still counting months.
Yeah. Yes.
I was still counting months.
Yeah.
And
I do remember.
Every time I would see we had some neighbors that were your aunt and uncle. And every time I saw them, I would always tell them, hey, guess what? Month 7 and then month, 13. And,
right.
I would always out of shame, I'm good enough. I promise I'm on month, whatever. And then after that, I realized, oh my gosh, that doesn't define me. Why am I tracking that? So there was that was the big difference. I think the other thing that from an energy standpoint, from abundant my energy was being able to walk through that process with the pain of remorse and guilt from what I had done versus when I had relapsed in sobriety, I was in the fog of shame.
Well, and Coby, that pain of remorse and guilt that you feel,
totally normal.
So,
it's good.
You're going, if you go and you disclose to Ashlynn, she, once you do that, does that mean that you're okay now? You've disclosed to Ashlynn, so now you can move on. Right?
No,
that's
true.
Because
no, it doesn't.
She's not the dictator of your recovery or the God over your recovery or anything like that, right? However, telling her is about you getting back in your integrity and clearing things up for you as a man in recovery, right? And so you take that remorse, you take that guilt, and it motivates you to disclose to her, hey, I gotta own this. When you own that and you have guilt and some remorse, but not shame, then you can then allow her to feel what she's gonna feel around that. You can give her space to be upset, to be sad, to be hurt, and you're not gonna try to fix it. You're not gonna try to change her emotions. You're not gonna crumble because she feels emotions, and that feels way different when you're in recovery and you come and disclose something that you've done, and she's like, oh my gosh, you get why this hurts me so bad, and you're connecting to those emotions with me, not using me to feel good enough about yourself because you disclosed, or getting all defensive or shut down because I have emotions about you disclosing.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's so interesting the way you put that because
Totally.
I think sobriety, you shared.
You were my God, I'm serious. When you said that, it was it hit me between the eyes.
Right.
That's how I used to be, totally.
But sharing in recovery without that expectation that she's going to be okay with this.
Yes.
or it's like it's truly for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
To say
Absolutely.
I'm showing up for me. This is really why I'm here.
Yes.
I think it's a big deal.
The
'Cause
partner can feel that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and let's be honest, like we don't always show up the way we want to. So we can have all the skills of recovery
Right.
and say I'm going to show up this way, and then it happens.
Right.
And everything kind of falls out the door. Like,
When you're in your
oh
emotional
my gosh,
mind,
this
boom.
is
Yeah.
hard. Yeah. And so it was a good, for us in that moment, you know, it was a big, like, okay, look how far we've come. I didn't go to
Yeah.
lashing out and name calling, but I did take time to say, this hurts and I need time to
Yes.
sit in this by myself. Like, I don't want to talk through this with you right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And we did come back to, like, there are so many differences for us with that relapse in
Yes.
recovery and sobriety.
Absolutely. And Ashlynn, it sounds like for you to process your emotions, you need space.
Yes.
And you don't need empathy from him in that moment. It's like, give me some space to process and work through this. And if you're in recovery, Coby, you're going to say, space? Absolutely. Like, I'm watching the girls tonight. Like, yes, I'm happy to give that to you.
Yeah.
If you're in your addiction, you're going to be saying, oh, I'm a good boy. Can't you? Why are you leaving me right now? Where are you going? Can't you see that I'm hurting right now because I relapsed? Right?
That's exactly why addiction is the great thief of self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
That right there.
Yep. And connection and love to other people, right?
For sure. For sure. So, can we handle relapse? The question is we can, and it is possible for you who are listening to handle relapse.
This is tricky with sex addiction. It's a bit trickier than other addictions because, you know, if I'm an alcoholic and I'm sober for 3 years and I go get a drink and I go to my wife and I'm like, honey, I drank last night. She'd probably respond with like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, that's scary for me, but like, let's work through this. If I am sober for 3 years and I'm a sex addict and I go sleep with a prostitute and I sit my wife down and I say, hey, honey, I slept with a prostitute last night. It's a little bit different conversation.
True.
Betrayal and addictive behaviors and relapse are connected with sex addiction. And so it's tricky for a couple to navigate relapse with sex addiction because that fidelity, that loyalty, that trust piece in the relationship is so there. And it's a tricky thing because it is actually good and healthy for a partner to understand that relapse is a possibility. It's also healthy and good for a partner to understand that you don't have to be okay with relapse. So it's this middle ground of like, look, I can love you still, but I'm still gonna have my boundaries and I'm still gonna have my recovery to protect myself from your addiction, right? So
I love that. And I think it is important to understand. It was really hard for me to hear that in the beginning. You know, he could relapse. Was like
he
what?
most likely will.
Right. And that's really scary to hear, especially in the beginning.
Yes.
Because it feels very hopeless. Like
Right.
this will never end. But what I had to understand, and what I hope our viewers can understand, is that when you do know more, you show up different.
Yes.
Both sides.
Indeed.
And so it is not the same. And
Yes.
it can be different. And it can be something that you learn and work through. So,
Recovery is real, which means sobriety is real too.
Yeah.
So sobriety is a byproduct of good recovery. So the goal is not sobriety. The goal is showing up as a person who loves yourself, who has peace within yourself, and who can connect to your partner. And then sobriety will happen too.
Yeah.
So
okay. Did you want to share any like ways that people can, or do we?
just one pointer I give is to beforehand, right now, listening to this episode, hopefully you get together as a couple and you say, hey, let's make a plan for when this happens. So we're not planning on this happening, but we're preparing for it. And so when relapse happens, what are the steps that we're going to take?
And you both need a plan.
You both need a plan. So you need your individual plan and you need your plan as a couple. So as a couple, okay, you guys have the 24-hour rule. So within 24 hours, I need you to disclose to me about relapse. Okay. Now, just so you know, in my plan, I'm going to have this self-care piece where I might leave. Okay, so it's really good to know beforehand that this is how it's going to go down. It makes it easier to disclose relapse once relapse happens. Like, okay, we got a process. If there's a real danger in having the boundary that you can't ever relapse again, and if you do, I'll leave you. What I see most of the time that creates is dishonesty. Is, oh, well, I can't tell her because she'll just leave me. Relapse is not okay. But what really is your boundary? I think your boundary is probably more around trust and safety and openness and honesty. And you might be to the point where, look, if I get cheated on one more time, I'm out. I'm out of here. And that's okay. And you need to follow through with that. But don't have the threat of, if you relapse again, then I'll leave you. Because that just creates no space there for dealing with a relapse.
I like that. I'm going to add in Coby. Part of our plan is he talks to his sponsor to sort through and figure out what triggered him, so that he came to me with like, hey, I figured out why. We have a solution. I'm kind of reevaluating.
I've worked my recovery.
Yes.
This is what I've done. This is how I've grown.
So he wasn't coming to me saying, hey, help me fix this.
Yes.
Because it's not my job. And he already had kind of a plan set out. What I've heard a lot, which is, I think, common, because our therapists are like, they are the people who really can see through, the emotional. Yeah. And so I'll hear, well, the plan is talk to my therapist and then tell you, but if you don't see your therapist for a month, that doesn't really work out.
That's why a sponsor, a support person is really helpful.
Yeah.
Guys, we are so glad you're here, and we realize this might have been hard to listen to for some of you because of the truth that's there, but honestly, we share this simply to give hope. We share our experience just to give hope that change is possible, and we hope that you can take this and learn and implement change and grow. So thank you for being here. If you want people to learn about this podcast and know about it, you can either share it or you can just go rate and review, and that will help people find it. So thanks for being here, guys. See you again.